This model is actually quite mainstream nowadays. There are several business out there that's been making tons of money just based on that model. Ones that come to my mind is probably 99 Designs. It's based in Australia. It's a $1 billion company right now. And its business model is simple. It actually gets people to actually put up projects where people from all over the world will then bid to do those kind of projects. Another project, another business model called Threadless, again another crowd-centric model, and they do t-shirts printing. And these t-shirts again are printed, or the designs are outsourced to the public, to designers who then get their t-shirts printed, get paid. At the same time, Threadless makes money out of those t-shirts, and these companies are making tons of money from a crowd-centric business model. So if you ask me if it's gone mainstream, it has definitely gone mainstream. It probably has not gone mainstream that big in Malaysia, and I think there are attempts in making that mainstream here. But in terms of the global scenario, it's gone big in other parts of the world, especially in the US and then also in Australia. So yes, it's becoming quite mainstream. Yeah. All right. Well, when we first started pitchIN in Malaysia, we wanted to bring this culture of actually getting entrepreneurs to pay it forward, i.e. helping each other to ensure that projects which are great will be financed and then be developed. So that was the whole idea of pitchIN. And as far as whether it has made any difference in the local startup ecosystem, we'd like to think so. Probably not in a big way that we want it to be, but still we have time on our side, and we're very patient. There are emerging entrepreneurs coming out every day, and everyone is looking at funding, raising funds. So while it's still early days for us, we see there is potential, and the tide is actually moving positively, in the sense that people are now looking at platforms like us, a crowdfunding platform, to actually validate their business model, their ideas, and then if the crowd likes it, the crowd gives them money, and they then will be able to develop their ideas. pitchIN started way back in 2012, in June 2012. Since 2012, we've already done 79 projects, if I'm not mistaken. The best projects that made it so good in pitchIN is actually the last one called Tapo Fest. It's actually a festival of sorts, celebrating local products, local bands, local musicians, local films. And that particular project, the project owner wanted to raise 85,000 ringgit within 30 days, and they managed to do it. Over 87,000 ringgit was funded by them. Now, the other big projects which we did was a project called Compact Rehabilitation Robot. It's a technology product where the project owners actually built a hardware product which will help stroke victim to actually do the exercises. That was funded to the tune of 27,000 ringgit, if I'm not mistaken. And before that, a project called T Something Nice, which is actually a real simple project. We got designers to actually design t-shirts under the theme of Merdeka and Hari Malaysia. And within 30 days, that project managed to garner 25,000 ringgit Malaysia. So we really want to see a lot of creative entrepreneurs coming into the platform to actually pitch their ideas and get the crowd to validate and actually give them money for them to actually then push their projects outside and to commercialize it. So these are the kind of projects which have been quite successful right now. We're hopefully looking for more projects, obviously, and we hope to see more entrepreneurs testing their idea on a platform like this. You know what, I wish I could say that it will replace it. I doubt very much. So the banks could sleep very well, knowing that they'll still be there. But what is great about crowdfunding in that sense is that it is a vehicle for people to validate their ideas. Entrepreneurs, before they even try to then build a business, they should first of all validate their ideas. And using a crowdfunding platform, you could actually fail fast and fail cheap. Because if the crowd don't want your idea or don't want or do not like your idea, they would not want to fund it. And that would mean to the entrepreneur that I may have to look at other ideas or pivot or change directions and whatnot. And that would actually save a lot of time and money for the entrepreneur themselves. Now, in terms of funding, crowdfunding actually fills a gap where pre-seed is. In Malaysia, we're so fortunate that the government is so supportive of entrepreneurship. We have grants given by several agencies. So there is no issue about there is no money available in Malaysia. There is. But what is probably lacking is the pre-seed, the very early stage, and most importantly, the validation part. Now that's where I think crowdfunding fills a gap in what we don't have right now. Having said that, in the next few months and hopefully before the end of the year, the authorities would actually introduce equity crowdfunding. This is then another disruptive model where rather than go to your traditional banks or whatnot, you now have a platform that will allow companies, startups to actually raise money by putting their companies on the website and getting VCs, angels and other investors to actually then give them money in exchange for equity. So hopefully that will probably change a bit in terms of the landscape of funding in Malaysia. Well, to an extent, I don't see a lot of local enterprises here embracing the model, whereas our counterparts in the US and Europe are actually using it in a big way. And I think that's unfortunate because local companies may not see the advantages of actually them embracing it. They could actually save a lot of time, money, resources if they were to follow the model closely. I know people like MDEC is actually doing a lot of work in trying to educate local businesses about the advantages of them embracing crowdsourcing models. It will take time, and I think companies need to be educated about this. And again, give them time. And I think in the future, very near future, we'll see more and more local companies embracing this concept. What we need to do is actually to actually educate them in the success stories of what other companies around the world have gone through when they embrace this model.
What are some of the disruptive business models that have changed the world in your opinion?
Yeah, I would like to actually approach that question by giving examples of companies that have actually done disruptive business models and actually being disruptive in their own sector. For example, the hotel industry. Airbnb came about and totally changed the landscape in terms of how that industry is being handled. Nowadays, everyone could actually be a hotel by itself. I could actually rent my own room to someone and disrupt the whole total hotel businesses. Airbnb is a good example. Another example would probably be WhatsApp. It's a $19 billion company right now. And it's a messaging company. And it's totally disrupt the telco businesses in that sense. So the other model again is probably, like I mentioned, Threadless. It's a t-shirt company, but they don't sell t-shirts as what traditional people do. What they do is that they crowdsource, get the best designs, pay the designers good money for it, and then sell the t-shirts. At the same time, people, the users themselves, get a chance to actually pick the t-shirts which they want to be printed. You know? So that's also another disruptive model to just selling t-shirts. You know? So the internet itself and technology itself have given businesses the tools for them to then disrupt modules of businesses which we've been so much comfortable with. And these are just three examples. There are a lot more examples, Spotify for that matter. Um, um, I know it has made listening to music so much easier. Not only that, it's become cheaper for users to then subscribe, paying what, less than 15 ringgit per month, and you got music at every device that you have, right? So Spotify also has disrupted the model, like I mentioned, Airbnb, WhatsApp. If you look at it, even in the early days of the internet, eBay have disrupted the model of how online e-commerce is done or auction is done. So there are a lot of examples out there that we can see. And you know, we're just starting. And I see a lot of things happening in terms of wearable technology, the Internet of Things. You can see a lot of business models are being tested on Kickstarter, for example. And these are just, you know, very, very early stages of what we may see later in the future. So the future is really, really bright. Just a matter of us Malaysians going into it, not just be mere followers, but also creating stuff on our own. So very hopeful about the future, actually. Well, good question actually. And if there was one company which again would probably give an example as someone that managed to disrupt a traditional business, it's probably MyTaxi. If you look at MyTaxi and how they've actually approached the taxi businesses, right? They've now funded what? They recently just got the E-Series. They've now moved not only in Malaysia but also moved to Singapore, to other countries like the Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand. They're looking at regional presence, you know. So MyTaxi is probably a good example of how local businesses in Malaysia have disrupted a traditional business like taxis, you know, driving taxis. You know? And everyone knows getting taxis in KL is quite a headache. You sometimes need to haggle in terms of the taxi price and all that. But I think with MyTaxi on board and a few other companies locally, but again, MyTaxi has been the best, has totally disrupted the, the, the businesses of taxis as we know. And not only that, and again, kudos to them, they've actually moved away, not only in this region, but also in other parts of the world. So MyTaxi is probably a good example. The other example is PictoChart. Again, they disruptive the model in terms of how presentations are done. Gone are the days where people would just use normal PowerPoint features. Now with PictoChart, you could actually use infographics, you know, being done and being developed by PictoChart, which makes then presentation so much more meaningful and beautiful and more exciting for people to then use and listen. So these are just two examples on the top of my head. I'm sure there are many others. But again, it's exciting days for startups in Malaysia. With the government fully supportive, the infrastructure is there. What we just need to do is just to inculcate these creative minds of Malaysians for them to then create more business models and disrupt traditional models. Another model which again forgot to mention, which was successful in pitchIN, is called ShuttleGo. ShuttleGo is, imagine Uber, but for the masses. So ShuttleGo is like a Uber, but using a van, where they will then shuttle people from their places to the nearest LRT, and then taking them back from the LRT back home. So that itself also is quite disruptive in that sense. So you could imagine people not having to park their cars anymore. So they could just wait at home and wait for the shuttle to come and then send them back. It's not really revolutionary in a way if you think about it. But then neither is Uber in that sense if you think about it, right? But the way how you execute it would actually then be that model that could disrupt what we see right now, what we normally see right now.
One last one.
Okay, right.
One last one.
Okay.
What would be advice to the youth
Mm-hmm.
who are actually
Right. Well, I think the US would, first of all, before you start even any businesses based on what idea you have, the first, the first advice, and again, they will hear this constantly within their journey, is to validate that idea first. I think that would probably be the first advice that any entrepreneur should do, to validate your idea, because you don't want to spend a lot of money and time, especially money in that sense, to start a business where no one actually wants the product or wants the service. So a platform like pitchIN is actually a great way for you to validate your idea. Putting it on pitchIN for 30 days, getting people to talk about it and see whether they're excited about the project and they're willing to even part a ringgit of their own money just to support your project. I think it speaks a lot if a stranger, no, not a family member, but a stranger who, after reading your project on pitchIN, looking at your video, looking at what you're trying to do, in the end deciding that, hey, I want to give 10 ringgit to this guy because I want to see the product being developed or the service being done. That speaks a lot. That tells you that people actually are willing to give you money for your product or for your service. That's validation. So my first and only advice for early entrepreneurs, validation. Validate your idea. Find a way to do it cheap, because if you fail, you want to fail fast and you want to fail cheap. And in pitchIN, you can do that. Obviously, we want you to succeed. But again, if you fail, you learn something from it. And at the same time, you don't have to waste a lot of money. So validation, that would probably be my advice to entrepreneurs.